Randy, we've got a problem.
What?
They go.
Reality's here.
But of course,
He's trying to
it has
crash the
been a lot
party.
of effort,
Reality?
a lot of resources.
Who let him in?
You're sad that people are mean? Well, I'm sorry. The world isn't one big liberal arts college campus.
I don't have an agenda like I want people to do something. I need them to do something. I want them to avoid irrationality.
I guess what interests me is just like what interests everybody else. It's just sort of what feels real.
That was totally wicked!
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. How are you doing this morning? How are you and you doing this morning? My name is Mr. Henry David Shine Thompson. Zig sitting over there on Pennsylvania Way. It is a Monday morning. The time as of right now is 9:05 Central. That's 10:05 Eastern. The date, October 26th. How is everybody doing this morning? This program you've stumbled upon right now is entitled Real News. We make real friends here. That's what we do. That's what this community is about. We have exchange of dialogue and discourse, and we debate with each other, and we get in each other's lives, and we live life with each other, and we do the thing, and we grow with each other. That's what we do here. That's why we do. Fantastic show coming up today. Big weekend of news as well. Obviously, something that I'm sure everybody's been hearing about. We may not touch on much during this show. Amy Coney Barrett, now judge, soon to be Justice Amy Coney Barrett. We've had a few flip-flops over the weekend or whatever. I want to say Murkowski said that she was going to vote yes. Let's see. Manchin came out and said he was going to vote no. Not a huge surprise there, but either way, looks like she has at least possibly 51 votes, maybe 52 votes. We'll see how that goes. Nevertheless, seems like she's going through, and it should be good stuff. Big show lined up today. Every single day you can see in the show notes here. As a suggestion from our boy Zig, by the way, the titles are getting a little bit smaller. We're sort of condensing the titles into what the overall theme is going to be, and then we'll flesh out what that theme is throughout the show here. We also have a meme review today, which is, I don't know, there's a bunch of meme drops over the weekend, so I figured, why not? We'll start out having some fun, get a little bit loosey-goosey, ease our way into the Mondays. As I introduce everyone else here, let's do the real news, fake news for today. Here's the real news, fake news. You'll see it at the bottom of the Facebook bar right there. Let's see. A bunch of people have already voted. 75% think this is a fake headline. 25% think this is a real headline. Here's how the game is played. The following headline at the bottom of Facebook there. Tell me if this is a real headline or a fake headline. Quote, CEO emails 10 million customers to tell them to vote for Biden. CEO emails 10 million customers to tell them to vote for Biden. Is that a real headline or a fake headline? As I introduce these other two as well, greatest audience in the nation appreciation. Tell me what you've been struggling with, where you're at in life, how you've been doing, philosophy you're reading through. You need some prayer concerns, you need a hot meal, you have a business trying to innovate, you want to bring to our attention, put them on this program, all that stuff. Flood the comment section with it. We'll talk about it in a minute. But David Shine Thompson, buddy, how you doing? I know there's kind of a big weekend in Knoxville this weekend as well, too. You're having some rallies and stuff, man. But how's it going, buddy?
Yeah, man. The no mandates rally was down at the square yesterday, and it was really good. They focused on the kind of the constitutional. We want our representative government back. Had a great speaker. I feel terrible. I can't remember his name, but the Tennessee Stands guy from over in Nashville.
Yeah, Gary Humble, yeah.
Gary Humble, yeah, and he was like, I know your buddy Grant. And I'm like, get out of here.
He used to be my wife's boss.
How about that? Yeah. Well, he was a lot more cool about it. He's like, yeah, I've known his wife for a long time.
Yeah,
and I'm like, that's really cool. So anyway, it was one of those kind of meetings where you're like, it is a small world after all.
Yeah, right?
But it was a really good showing. I made the news, which is good news going into tonight's commission meeting, because it showed everybody in Knox County that there's people who are who that's what they believe in. They believe in representative constitutional government, and that was just a good reminder for everybody, I thought. Plus, there were all these people walking by. It was in Market Square, and all these people were like, "What's that? What are they about?" And weirdly enough, like. They just had people walk up who were like, "What are y'all about?" and then stayed around, and it was really cool.
Really?
Yeah, it was really cool. And I got this new hat, the North Knox. You know, like the North Face, but with the Knox on it. So
That's what I'm
that
talking
was
about.
my weekend. And my brother came over again. He's been coming over every weekend, and it's so good.
Oh,
and
nice.
the Vols lost,
Yeah,
which, you know, always makes it rain on Mondays.
yeah,
So-
that's true. It does. It
So
makes
it's
it rain
raining
on Mondays.
right now.
Well, there's a bunch of people out there. I want to say they had a similar rally in the Franklin area the day before, so they're going all over the place doing these rallies. When we touch some of the local news later on in the program, we might actually bring up some of those photos and videos just to give you guys the size and sense of the impression of how big the crowd was. But Zig, buddy, how's it up in Pennsylvania, man? You have an all right weekend?
It's all right, man. Doing real news, real work. In fact, this weekend I was working on putting a podcast together. I'm going to have that together. I'm going to distribute it through Anchor, get it into Spotify, get it into Google Play Store, Apple Play Store, whatever the store is. I'm going to have that in there. That's going to be 1,000% super exciting. The main thing that I was working on is, and it doesn't have anything to do with today's show, but health euphemisms in healthcare. So, for example, we have things like single payer. When they're talking about single payer, they're talking about millions of taxpayers. That's not single payer. That's a euphemism. Universal access. It's not like Pluto and Mars and Jupiter are begging to get access to healthcare. That's a euphemism. Insurance, which is supposed to be some kind of guarantee of healthcare, is largely a euphemism because a lot of people have insurance, but they're not getting any kind of care, or at least not for any reasonable rate. So, yeah, excited to work on that. That's going to be awesome.
That's an interesting weekend right there, man. Euphemisms in healthcare. It's
But it's those euphemisms that stop that industry from receiving the scrutiny that it deserves.
I see.
That's
Okay.
that's really why it's important, because we have all these terms like healthcare, Medicare, that stop people from scrutinizing it. If people understood that when they're arguing for Medicare for all, that they're arguing for mandatory insurance for everybody, that sounds a lot less sexy. That sounds a lot less appealing. People have insurance, it sucks, and they're not enthused about it.
Man, I totally understand that. It's actually, in part, some of the theme of the show today, talking about get woke, go broke. Some of the theme for today is even talking about these Twitter accounts, these blue checkmark Twitter accounts that, I don't know, just suppose don't understand what euphemisms are. And as we enter these next section here, Shine, let's start with a little meme review. As Shine's getting to the meme review section in the show notes, one thing I want to pull up going off of what Zig just said. So we had a bunch of last Thursday's debate. This was just overwhelming on Friday and a little bit over the weekend cycle as well. Apparently there was a bunch of verified Twitter users, which if this doesn't prove to you that means nothing at all, I don't know what will. There's a bunch of verified Twitter users, and one in particular I'm reading right now. I'll just read the tweet to you. This is going off of what Trump said. He said something to the effect of, I don't know, we have coyotes that are bringing these kids across the borders and we can't track where their parents are. It was a question that was asked during Thursday's debate last week. And somebody who was verified on Twitter said the following: did Donald Trump just say 545 kids, they can't find their parents, that they came over through here, that they came over through cartels and coyotes? How the hell does coyote bring a whole human across the border? Lord, stop talking.
That was a state rep in Georgia who made that
That was
tweet.
a state rep in Georgia, dude.
I remembered
Yes.
it because it stands out like a sore thumb, because hers was the most, she was the most important person with the most overtly stupid tweet. It's where those two lines intersected.
That's right. Most important, most stupid tweet. Well, that's in the show notes here, and it kind of sets the theme for today. And a little bit of what Zig was talking about is like, I guess my whole point in this is, I don't know, man. Do you need to understand what a coyote is? Not necessarily, but if you're going to have such a strong opinion on immigration, yeah, you should probably at least understand the role of a coyote. You should absolutely understand the role of a coyote if you're going to have such overwhelmingly strong opinions on immigration. It kind of proves the point as well. Like, you just started developing this opinion on immigration, I don't know, last month or last year, or at least within the last 3 years, and you probably haven't done enough research to actually fully understand what the process is, what the situation is, what's happening at the border. If you don't at least understand a term like coyote, and I'm not saying everybody out there should, but if you're going to have these types of opinions on a major point policy issue in American politics, then yeah, you should understand what the role is of people being paid to smuggle people across the border. And you should probably understand what that term is called. Hitting the meme reviews for today, man, and we'll come back on some of this. Just some of them are about that statement right there. First one, Sean, if you want to pull that up, is the fear as a virtue. I don't know how people are going to feel about this, but it kind of hit me, especially over the weekend. But this one you're about to look at on your screen here is this scene from The Matrix. And hopefully Zig can see this too as we're sharing some of this, maybe not. But Zig, if you can't see this, is this scene from The Matrix and this little kid, where he's been in the spoon. Right? It says, do not try and teach the Karens that a lockdown was a mistake. That's impossible. Instead, only try and realize the truth. And the truth in The Matrix is that there is no spoon, right? And so Neo's character looks back and says, what truth? And the little kid says that the lockdown has turned fear into a virtue. Those who are afraid believe they're better people than those who aren't, and will subconsciously look for ways to multiply fear because it's their virtue. And I don't know, man, I think a good meme kind of tries to prove something in the back end as well. And I don't know, this one to me speaks a little bit of what's going on, does it not? That I think we've turned fear into a virtue. I don't know, Zig, what do you make of that? Am I stretching too much here?
I don't think the meme is particularly well done because that's not like a brandable, shareable thing.
I would have to agree with myself. It feels more like a novella, than a meme.
It's a little thick, but in terms of the point, man, I think it's a solid, sound point. Most people who are most afraid in our society's obsession with safety, despite the fact that we are living in safer times across the board in terms of economics, healthcare, whatever, even during the lockdown, despite all that, people always have these paranoid delusions about needing more government or needing insurance or something else for additional safety. And I think that's solid.
By the way, let's see, Eric just said on Facebook, something that was talked about the conspiracy theory and podcast for the longest time. Kelly just said dumb, by the way. Sean, let's go to the next one here. Jump over the commies, right? That one's a little bit dumb. But libertarians, I always like to bring up the libertarian memes because a lot of these I pulled from the libertarian meme accounts. And look, if they're going to knock on themselves, I'm going to help them do it as well. There's one that just says strictly libertarians. It's just a bunch of wrestlers, all labor libertarians, all fighting each other. And I think this so aptly puts together, especially where we are right now. In part of the reason why I like to do the meme reviews is because it brings up so many different topics we can talk about in a very short period of time. They're little, just like the memes are packaged together, we can talk about them, right? We can even get into what the definition of meme is and where that came from, which I believe to be through Aristotle. We'll talk about that later on if you want to. Nevertheless, libertarians right now.
Andre the Giant libertarian.
Is that who you are?
Right. Yeah, that's the kind of libertarian I am. I'm the Andre the Giant type.
I want to know who the libertarians are over there in the peanut section, just laughing at that one libertarian getting choked out. Oh, I don't know if that's Bret Hart getting choked out or who that is, but I don't know. Facebook, what do you make of this? Because this seems to be what libertarians
the ones getting choked out are the big L libertarians.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
By the philosophy little L libertarians.
And then the left-leaning libertarians are that dude in the white outfit right there.
Isn't all that a violation of the non-aggression principle? You got wrestlers in there. So
that's why I said I'm the Andre the Giant type of libertarian. I will choke someone out if I have to.
I think it's supposed to be Care Bears, hugging each other or something, because this whole thing is just too aggressive, man. It's a violation of the non-aggression principle. I have to flag those guys for that,
Eric said, by the way, yes, libertarians are the best memers. Jonathan said there's a dude that's from the 70s claiming he coined the term in a book that he wrote. Let's go to the next one here. Look, I brought up this one just to say that I think this is a perfect example of what libertarians are right now in the time where, I don't know, this might be an overstatement, but I do believe that in 2020, a year that was just desperately begging for any viable third-party choice, maybe not to win the thing, but I'm not exaggerating when I say if the libertarians would have done this correctly, I truly do believe the party probably could have garnered at least 7% of the vote. And I know that's a major thing to say, but I would not have been surprised to see at least 7% of the vote if they would have done it right. I'm not saying it had to be in a mosh. It's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying there was a lot of infighting getting up to this point. There really just was not a cohesive, coordinated effort as to how are you going to play the game of politics properly. And you know where I come from on this. Philosophically, I consider myself a minarchist. All right. I just can't get behind the party movement because, in my opinion, it's a great philosophy club. It's just not doing much of the party right now. Sorry, not sorry type thing. Let's go on to the next one here, Sean. All right. Let me hit this one, Sean, just because I want to see if people have seen this, ever heard about this first. Go to Rudy's shirt. Okay. Let me hit Rudy's shirt real quick. I want to see if anybody's seen this story, heard of this story, if there's anything to make of this story, or if anybody even cares. If not, we'll move on quickly. Rudy's shirt, though, is a little meme that comes up in here. Says, next up to speak is some, I don't know, looks like a Rose Garden address from where Amy Coney Barrett's right there. It says, terribly pixelated because someone's probably copied it 5 different times. Next up to speak, ladies and gentlemen, Rudy Giuliani. Oh, 1 second, folks. He's got to tuck his shirt in. And then Rudy Giuliani is down there on the bottom of the podium. You'll see him at the bottom right, looking like he's laying down on something, tucking the bottom of his shirt in. I'm going to pregnant pause here for a minute just to see if anybody knows what this is referencing, knows what this is coming from, or has even heard of this story.
It's from the new Sasha movie, you know?
The new Borat movie, right? Yeah. And I'm just bringing this up as a meme only to not even to get into the story necessarily, just to see if this even became a story. Now, it's something I followed for a while, but it's also because I was a major Borat fan or Sacha Baron Cohen's fan from way back in the day. From Ali G days, I was a major fan of his until he got so wildly political. And then it just became, he used to have a South Park approach, man. This guy was so good. It used to be decent social commentary because he would sting left and right. He was an equal opportunity offender. And I appreciated the way that he went after, especially, you know, I don't know, British politicians, but even some American politicians, just calling out absurdity for the sake of absurdity, right? But then it became this very calculated thing over the last couple of years to try and take down populism. And I don't know, man, it just became a little bit too much for my taste. All right, I think you become the thing that you're trying to fight when you do that. I think South Park folks would agree with me as well. This one in particular, though, if you don't know this story, Rudy Giuliani got caught up in some alleged scheme where a 24-year-old female who was posing as a 15-year-old journalist.
I don't even think she mentioned that at any point, though.
Her age?
Yeah, she didn't mention that the whole time until Borat came in dressed like a woman and said that she was her dad.
Right.
Yeah. It was, so for all intents and purposes, until Borat walked in dressed like a woman, she was a 24-year-old woman because she looks like, that is how old she is. And that's how old she looks, too.
That's one of the reasons why I'm bringing this up is just to see, like, did this become a story for anybody? Did anybody follow it? I know a few people were tracking it, but I just didn't know if it actually became a thing or not. It was like
if you could just like label everything A, B, and C. It was like a C-level national story for about 6 hours on Saturday.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my opinion.
The end of that story is that apparently at the end of the interview, he was in some room with this girl or something and was leaning back to allegedly tuck his shirt in or take a microphone cord out or something. And that's what it looked like he was, well, doing whatever it looked like he was doing at that particular time. So wondering if that became a story for anybody else. Let's bring this up real quick, Shine. Go back to the meme review section if you can and say, do the one that says blue check animals. That's one that's kind of...
No, man, I got to do the power of white girl.
Okay, that's fine.
This is like the first funny one you actually put in here. The other ones are like news topics. There we go. I like this one a lot.
By the power of white girl, I'm offended on your behalf.
Yes. Now that's funny. By the power of white girl, I'm offended on your... But that's a woman doing it, so it doesn't sound like that. But it's like
that woman that would be offended would have sounded like that. Yeah, so you're right on that.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. It's like the He-Man thing. Like,
yes, yeah.
Or not He-Man, Thundercats. By the power of omens, you know. But it's by the power of white girl, which is funny to me.
They are the most offended going on right now. Hey, one more here, and then we'll end this thing here for today. Do blue check animals. The blue check animals here is literally just proving the point one more time. What liberal blue check marks picture when they hear the term coyote, drug mule, cat burglar, or Navy SEAL. It's just a bunch of pictures of animals. All right. And the point I'm bringing this up again is because I want to ask this question one more time, which rolls into this next topic here of, look, do people need to be fully aware of the present situation that they're sitting in before they make commentary on it? Do they need to have full awareness? If you get that woke, are you going to go broke is essentially what I'm asking here, okay? And in any sense, are you going to go broke in your Twitter sphere, in the political capital that you're spending out here, which is as valuable, if not more valuable to some people than it is for an actual capital? Do you need to understand what you're talking about before you start posting about some of this stuff? The joke is obviously what we brought up before, when we started this whole thing with, that there's literally elected representatives in Georgia that don't know what the term coyote is and thinks that the president of the United States is making a reference to an actual animal picking up a child and running it across the border. I guess what I'm asking is, I don't know the level of psyche that you have to get to think to yourself, all right, man, is it more logical that the sitting president of the United States believes that an animal is going to carry another human being across the border? Or is it more logical and more likely that I might be missing something here? And somehow, when a rational human being, or in this case, possibly wildly irrational human being, does that equation in their mind, they somehow fall on the side of, no. it's much more likely that the sitting president of the United States thinks that animals are carrying human beings across the border. So with that in mind, let me go ahead and tweet that out. And it wasn't just this lady. Sean, you can see down there in the show notes sections where it says coyotes. And again, this leads into the next section here where it says coyotes. Look where it says apparently some people are that clueless. There's a picture there coming from Twitter of dozens and dozens. And this is just one screen grab. There are probably 3 or 4 pages full of blue check marks that are all asking this same exact question. The children are brought here by coyotes, question mark? Coyotes, question mark? Not the coyotes. The coyotes are being blamed now? Did Trump just say children were brought here by coyotes? This is dozens and dozens and dozens of verified influencers on Twitter, who I'm sure their Instagram accounts and YouTube accounts and everything else are as verified as these, that are making these same claims that are somehow just jumping over that proverbial shark. And I just can't quite follow the rationale. I just don't get it. Leading into the main story for today, and Sean, you may need to show him in the actual show notes section here. Let me ask Zig real quick here, buddy. The headline here, the real news, fake news for today. The CEO emailing 10 million customers to tell them to vote for Biden. I'm putting Zig on the spot a little bit here, but would you think that would be a real headline or a fake headline today?
No, I actually voted fake for that.
Did you?
Yeah, I voted fake for that. I don't think any CEO would necessarily have access to that many emails.
Oh, I know the answer. I know the
Seems like
answer.
a lot, man.
I know the answer.
What's the answer?
It's real.
It's real.
It happened over the weekend with the guy who owns Expensify.
Yeah.
Which he has access to all the emails because it's like a real hardcore business website for like CFOs and things like that at actually like really big companies. It's kind of like when you go on business trips and you expense stuff. It's one of those kinds of
exactly what it is. Yeah.
Companies. So your email would be like really important because you're always getting receipts and all those things. So not only do they have the emails and the CEO have the availability to use them, you are looking for those emails from Expensify because they might have your hotel receipt or your rental car receipt or your whatever receipt on it. So you're actually looking for those emails from them.
See, but you understand. Go ahead.
Probably should have went with the probability. I think all of these have been real.
Well, I'm telling you, man, like this is why I think it's such a struggle for people. Because look at what's going on right now. 57% of people voted real news, 43% voted fake news. And I think everyone's going through the same sort of mental calculation that I'm going through pertaining to the coyote story. And I do think it's relevant to go into what the story that happened over the weekend. All right, that the coyote story is a bunch of folks that should be seemingly rational human beings that are going through that equation of, is it more likely that the president is talking about animals carrying kids, or is it more likely that I might be missing something? Okay, but there's something baked into this delusion where it says, no. It's more likely that the president is talking about an animal carrying children across the border, so I need to go with that one. And something about this CEO over the weekend, Sean, is exactly correct. This company called Expensify. Some of you work for companies that use something called Concur. Some of you use this company called Expensify. The short and sweet of it is that it's a company whereby you can cite your receipts of what you've spent and expense it. Okay, expense it through the corporate credit cards or something. It's a very neat little tracking system, all right? You put it in, you type in what you made the expense report on, what the date was, and the reason why you did that little thing. And this company president, CEO, I actually have the copy of the email right here, where we're going to go through a little bit of this, sent out the following email to 10 million individuals. If you have an Expensify account at all, for any particular reason that your email account is attached to, you received this email, 10 million individuals. Here's how it started. I know you don't want to hear from me. Well, all right. Well, good. Okay, let's pack it up. We're done with that, right? I know you don't want to hear from me, and I guarantee I don't want to say it. But we're facing an unprecedented attack on the foundations of democracy itself. Already a major problem, yeah? If you are a U.S. citizen, anything less than a vote for Biden is a vote against democracy. All right, so we're one sentence into this now. Call it 2 sentences. And you're just making this abundantly clear.
I think anybody should vote against democracy. Anybody should be happy to see democracy go. That's awesome. Democracy has already died. It died in Athens. It already happened. It's been dead.
It was briefly revived with the Dutch, but they're gone too.
I mean, we're in the future now. We're living in a futuristic republic. Some of these people's minds and spirits are back in Athens, wishing for democracy. I mean, ancient souls out there, really, truly. Sorry to
No, look, you clearly picked up on the first problem that I'm coming through as well, too. The tendency for Democrats or people on the left to coin this thing as democracy. And I don't know if they're doing it subconsciously or if they just don't care that there might be a subtle difference.
What the real truth is, the more people they can convince that our republic is a democracy, the more free press and free advertising they can get. That's why they insist that people call it a democracy.
Right.
So that way it's an ad for the Democrat Party, because then the mental calculation is that, well, if we're in a democracy and these guys are Democrats, then this is good and I should vote for them. And this is the party of truth. That's what is going on. And that's why Democrats insist on this perversion. And that's why any Republican or anybody who at least understands and respects our government should insist in all cases.
No, I know.
A republic.
It seems to be such a fleeting thing to pitch right now. I mean, if we really were, I don't know, students of history, I think these Californians that are coming out there right now, get rid of the Electoral College, make us a full-on democracy. Well, would you been pitching for that in the 80s? No, man, because you were all Republican back then. So, I mean, goodness gracious, man, this state was comfortably blue up until what, like early mid-2000s? California was comfortably red up until the mid-80s. This stuff shifts around. All right, this purpose behind having a representative republic, or a constitutional republic, if we want to call it. And Zig's already picking up on the first discrepancy that we have, the first problem we have. He said democracy no less than 2 different times in 2 sentences here. He goes on to say, that's right. I'm saying a vote for Trump, a vote for a third-party candidate, or simply not voting at all. They're all the same in his mind. They all mean, quote, this is what he said, CEO of Expensify, said, I care more about my favorite issue than democracy. I believe Trump winning is more important than democracy. He's saying this is what you're saying if you're not voting for Biden. I believe Trump winning is more important than democracy. I am comfortable standing aside and allowing democracy to be methodically dismantled in plain sight. Says if the polls are accurate, that's a roughly 50% chance that you agree Trump needs to go. You know what to do. Show up November 3rd and vote for Biden. Or even better, don't wait until then. Vote today. Go to vote.org. Yada, yada. It says the rest of the email is intended to address the concerns for those who disagree. And I'll try to take the most likely questions in turn. Now, at some point, we can go through all these things if you really want to, or at least a portion of them. That's what the majority of the show is going to be devoted to today.
Well, but a vote for Trump isn't a vote for the death of democracy. I mean, because democracy already died when the Constitution was ratified. Even under the Articles of Confederation, that wasn't democratic. That was still at least a republic on the state level. But furthermore, voting for Trump isn't going to lead to the quote unquote death of democracy. Presidents are now doing so much pitching to ordinary people, Republican or Democrat, that they're actually facilitating democracy, if you will, or at least a democratic way of thinking. To really support the death of democracy, you have to support restrictions on the executive. And that's what I support. We don't need democracy. We need more restrictions on the executive. And neither candidate, unfortunately, is running on that.
No, I completely agree. And it doesn't even seem like, I don't know. I was saying Democrats are not only they're trying to pitch a version of democracy that we just simply don't have right now. And look, the reason why I call this "Get Woke, Go Broke" is obviously everyone's heard the phrase "Get woke, go broke." The more woke you become, the more likely it is that you're going to go broke. The more conscious you are of social movements going on right now that are flash pan, like literally they just instantaneously burn off like a gasoline fire would be. The more you pander to that audience. Because in actuality, that audience is really no larger than 5 to 10% at absolute best. And let's be honest, it's far less than that. But if you pander to the 5%, that is probably not your actual consumer base anyway. If you pander to them, it is likely that you're going to create a terrible product or not sell the products that they would like. And you're probably going to go broke. You're probably going to go out of business. We've seen what ended up happening with Dick's Sporting Goods when they stopped selling firearms. It's not like they're going out of business. Don't get me wrong, but they saw a substantial drop in some of that stuff. We've seen multiple. We've heard stories. I don't know. There was some cafe.
What about Netflix? What about Netflix? One of the more recent examples of doing kind of the I don't know what you'd call it. It's a brand of kind of wokeness, but it's a really dark side of it that has to do with kids and feminism. But they've lost over 1 million subscribers. Look at the MLB, the NBA, the NFL. Yeah. They're all down by like 50% if you look at it over 10 years. But it's constant. Anybody who leans too hard into the woke goes broke.
And don't get me wrong, man. I would probably say the same thing. They're leaning either way to the woke, right? If it was woke right or woke left, it doesn't matter. But look here,
There
when
is
he
no
says,
such thing as woke right. Never say that again.
well, there is such thing as woke right, though. I mean, there absolutely is such thing as woke right. I mean, if we have 3%ers marching at the back ends of these, I don't know, black Israelites or something like that, then yeah, we just don't talk about it nearly as much as the woke left because we don't have 3%ers being painted in the middle of downtown streets. It's just not nearly as publicized. They're there. They're just not nearly as prominent, and they're not backed by a full-on publicization behind it either, right? But I'm saying, like, this problem of dichotomous thinking is something that does infect both sides. And I believe, much like the author of this guy, Coddling the Mayor of Mind, that it started with the left, and there was a reaction from the right that came back from this, right? So they're there. They're just not nearly as much, and it's almost as problematic. But this guy says if the polls are accurate, then roughly 50% of those that agree with Trump need to go. So he's just basically, what is he saying then? That 50% of his customer base, he doesn't mind at all losing 50% of his customer base if he has to. I don't quite understand the mentality.
I think what some of these people are hoping for is that the government adds more restrictions and rules and regulations, and then they're the ones who are in with the government at the time, and they become the state provided service. For example, Google has, from what I understand, if I'm not mistaken, perhaps I am, folks in the audience fact check this, but from what I understand, Google has entered into the healthcare market. Now, if Google enters into the healthcare market, we get a single payer system. Who do you think is going to be in charge of the nation's healthcare? It's certainly not going to be bureaucrats. No, what will happen is that provider will be Google because they'll have access to people's personal information, their records, and they'll use that as a pitch to make themselves the sole national provider for healthcare. And I think that that's the strategy that a lot of other companies are aiming for too. If we support social justice early enough, then when these industries become nationalized, we'll be the ones first in line on the good guys team to be able to get a deal with the government.
Eric just sent Facebook too. More Hollywood stars coming out with their support, Brad Pitt being one. It really does seem that a lot of movies and music stars, millionaires who think we are desiring their opinion for the greater good, right? Honestly, that comment makes me think a little bit about what you say from time to time, Zig, is that I think on purpose or inadvertently, we've turned a lot of our politicians into sideline movie stars because we keep shoving a camera in front of their face. Do you know what I'm saying? Right, like Kamala Harris is a perfect example. This controversy that went on last weekend or the weekend before. I don't know how many people heard about it or even care about it. But Chris Pratt apparently was one of the only members of the Marvel movie series or whatever that didn't show up to do some Zoom digital interview with Kamala Harris. And Kamala Harris, much like everyone else in the Biden camp right now, has been refusing to do public interviews. They've just been going underground, Harris and Biden both. I think they've made public statements about this over the last couple of days saying like, hey, we're going to pack it up. We're pretty much done. We're just going to maybe hit some phones or something, but we're not going to be doing any interviews.
Biden put a lid on the campaign yesterday. That was right? Yesterday. Yesterday, he decided that between now and election date, they have no public events scheduled. Weird. Weird.
Right? And while they're saying they have no public event scheduled at all, Kamala Harris is going out there doing a digital interview with all these Marvel superhero people or something like that. And Chris Pratt's the only one that didn't show up. And now apparently everyone wants to cancel Chris Pratt because they think he might be some type of closeted Trump supporter. I don't know. But Zig, what do you make of that, man? I mean, from what Eric is saying, is there any, tie to this idea of like, dude, we're turning our politicians into Hollywood movie stars, and it's arguably the worst thing for us right now.
Well, that's part of it, but I think upon further analysis, the whole thing is a pitch for when the government nationalizes all products and services. Many of these movie stars and people are hoping that they can be the first in line for government movies, for government-run, Hollywood shows. And I think the same is going on with Google. Google wants to be the organization that's first in line for a national healthcare service. And so I think that's what people ought to be concerned with, is that all these big segments of our economy and society are aligning so far socialist that if we continue to cede power from the legislator to the executive, then you're going to have those organizations dominate others at the expense of ordinary working Americans.
Well, look, so this CEO goes through a number of different claims as to why he sent an email to 10 million of his customers telling them to vote for Biden, right? The question is, so why do you care so much about democracy? He says democracy is core to our business. There are successes in a variety of ways. He goes on to talk about how, I don't know, it was internally we're a famously flat organization that we need to express our democracy across the people we can get to. He says, what gives you the right to tell me what to do? That's the question. I know people are going to be asking this is, what gives you the right to tell me what to do? His answer is the First Amendment. To be clear, you don't need to listen, but the First Amendment exists to encourage people like you and me to find some way to talk about the issues that matter. Okay, fine. But does that mean you should exploit the private information of 10 million of your customers to put your political agenda? You're not a PAC. You are not a political organization. You are an expense company. For real? He asked the extra other question here, said, but you're a company. Shouldn't you remain neutral? The obvious next question, he says, Expensify depends on a functioning society and economy. Not many expense reports get filed during a civil war. All right, man. So, whatever, man.
All right. So that's actually a really decent question because I was sitting here thinking to myself, I don't think what you did was illegal. I just think it's stupid. You may lose a lot of customers this way. Even if your customers agree with you, you may lose some customers because they don't want to be seen as being a part of some political organization. But as you were saying that, I was thinking, the fact that he's not a PAC means what he did was a donation to a political candidate because he did it with his business. And I imagine the value of what he just did was larger than the individual contribution. Dude. It's probably a higher value than $1,800 or whatever the personal contribution cap, or $2,400 if he includes like his wife, if his wife or something has part ownership in the company, or a friend has part ownership in the company. If you include all the owners, I bet it doesn't add up to the value of what he just did, which means he actually may have violated the law. He may have violated election law. Like, you're allowed as a company to set up a separate legal organization like a PAC or something like that, or C4 or C3, and do those kind of things. But I think especially when you are promoting a candidate, you can't do things like that. I really don't think you can.
Well, I mean, it's a fantastic point you bring up, because what is the in-kind contribution equivalent? What would that be to somehow getting a message out to 10 million people? I mean, that's basically what Shine's saying. Is all right. So what's the in-kind contribution?
I imagine it's around 50 grand, 60 grand at the at the bottom, at the very bare minimum, at the absolute minimum, to send it to every single one of his customers. How much would he charge for that?
Dude, and they're verified information too. Like, every single person on here is an actual email account that they use.
Correct.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, I really feel like that's an in-kind. I mean, that's what that Citizens United case was about, to be honest. That's what it was about. And they came down with, you're allowed to do it, but you can't do it with the same legal entity as your for-profit company. You have to set up a separate legal entity to do those kind of things. So, I mean, I doubt he'll get called on it, but and feel free to argue. I'm not an authority on this. I'm not an election lawyer. I've never worked in the election bureaucracy, whether that be county, state, or federal. So I may be wrong about this. If anybody in the comments has any information, and it may come down to what's going on in his state, but I really feel like he may have violated federal election law through the in-kind contribution cap. I feel like if Dinesh D'Souza violated the law, then this guy probably did.
Look, did they ask him, okay, so don't you think you're exaggerating a bit? He says, look, I truly wish I was. I wouldn't be sending this email if it were just an election with normal issues. He says, doesn't everyone suppress votes? He asked the question of, isn't Trump just trying to prevent voter fraud? He addresses, isn't Biden just using more widespread voting to get elected? He goes through a couple different questions here, all right? And some of the follow-up that I can't quite cite why I know this, but
it's so pretentious for him to ask his own questions and answer them. It's such a pretentious Silicon Valley, stupid corporate thing to do.
Well, but further, how is it democratic for a millionaire to send out emails? That's not coming from the people.
Right.
That's coming from a member of the elite. In fact, it's less it's more aristocratic. Okay, it's more or less saying, I am part of the elite few. I am the best. I know when the proper time is to jump into these elections and get involved because I'm an aristocrat. I'm one of the best. I'm better than you. I know. And I don't like it. Democrats should at least be consistent. If they want to be consistent, have your funding come from small donors, have it come from people in the grassroots. But when you're using the wealthy elite to your advantage, that's not democratic. And yet Democrats always go back to the wealthy elite. 2016, Hillary Clinton had a big campaign event with a bunch of rap stars. That's not democratic. That's aristocratic. And people would do well to understand those distinctions. Members of the Democrat Party would do well, at least if for logical consistency, to understand those things.
Well, and think about what Zig just said. All right, that they're part of these individuals. This guy in particular is the CEO of Expensify. I think it's the second or third largest expense-related company in the United States. Don't quote me on that, but I want to remember saying
not
I read
anymore.
this.
It's not.
not anymore. It's not. But from what Zig just said, it goes back to my original question of these blue verified checkmark people. When they were doing this equation in their head of the either or, it's either that Trump thought that actual animals were carrying kids across the border or that I might be missing something. I think there's a component that I was missing. And it plays into this story right here. So I can't tell you necessarily why I know what I'm about to report on right now, but just go find anybody that has an Expensify account that's been trying to cancel it, and they'll tell you the same thing, okay? If you have an Expensify account and you try to cancel it, they will likely send you a response back that says something to the effect of like, well, we'd love to cancel it, but you already have a contract for another year. So sorry, not sorry. And then you follow back saying like, okay, well, what's the penalty fee for canceling early? Like any other contract should have a penalty fee for canceling early. The response that you get back is there is no penalty fee because you can't cancel. Even if you cancel, you've already paid us ahead of time, or we're going to continue to withdraw it, or whatever the case might be. But the point is, even if you have political, philosophical reasons for wanting to get out of business with us, you're locked in for another year. So I go back to one more time to these blue checkmark people. I go back one more time when I started this situation of, does this CEO, is he missing something? Is a screw loose? Is he gone nutty, man? I don't think so. Zig's talking about before these aristocratic elite that are just sort of pushing this stuff down and these little plebs like us. I think he made a very calculated decision. And I'm fairly certain that somebody in one of these departments, call it, I don't know, the accounting department or the relations department, or maybe his sales department, or maybe it doesn't matter. Somebody came to him and said, hey, here's the percentage of your customers that already have a locked-in contract for the next, say, year or so. If you were to make this move right now, the percentage of them that even could pull out would be X. So I think there was a very clear, calculated decision that he made of, I'm going to go upset half of my base. But out of that half of my base, I at least have, say, 60 to 70% of that base locked in for another year. And they're probably going to forget about it a year from now anyways. So out of that 60 or 70%, I'll probably keep at least half, if not more of that. So really all I'm talking about losing here is negligible. It's marginal. And the amount of political capital that I can get in the back of this and free advertising for dummies like me that are talking about it this morning, the amount of free advertising that I get out of it is guaranteed to pick me up more than what I would have lost. I don't know if that's the equation this guy did, but I'm telling you right now, man, once I heard that's a response that came back, I think Zig has a point. And I think I might have missed something with these blue checkmark people. They don't care. None of them care, man. None of them care.
They're definitely not thinking about consequences.
They're definitely not thinking about consequences,
or thinking
man.
that they're too big to fail, so to speak,
right?
To use a popular phrase. But Grant, do you feel like, I mean, that's a great point. I don't want to like gloss over it. I mean, I think when people see or read that email, go to the show notes, read the email. I think it's kind of obvious that these people are not caring about tomorrow. It's all about today. It's all about the moment. But I feel like if like Mr. Marriott decided he wanted to put a vote for Trump card in every hotel room in America, that there would be an investigation of Mr. Marriott. I would feel like there would be. And I don't think Mr. Marriott would do that, to be honest. I don't think he's a Trump fan. But you get what I'm saying. If it were not digital, if it were physical, if there were a little note, and you came into your Marriott hotel, back from vacationing, and they've cleaned up your room, they vacuumed, they made the bed, and on the bed there's a little folded card, little tent on the bed, and it says "Vote for Trump, Pence 2020." I feel like there would be an FEC investigation for an in-kind contribution, and I feel like on a broader level, make it so you can see my face, I guess, since I'm talking so much. On a broader level, I feel like generally these tech CEOs feel like the law doesn't apply to them because they don't live in the real world. They live on the information superhighway. And I think that's part of the broader problem that we're looking at generally. I mean, with like Facebook, Twitter, and Google, and PayPal, and all these companies, they just feel like the rules don't apply to them. And that's part of their not caring. They don't care because they feel like they can't experience legal consequences, civil consequences, customer consequences, and they feel like they are the future. So they can do whatever they want in the present.
Well, that's the basis of their underlying philosophy, right? We are progressive. We are good. We are on the right side of history, and anyone who disagrees with us is wrong. So therefore, we can't be stopped. We have to win every election. We're going to win. We're the best in. Marx and Hegel said that we're right and that we're progressing towards the utopia. No one's going to stop us, and no one can stop us, and no one should stop us. That's the kind of underlying logic that feeds into their hubris, right? Their hubristic thinking. And if they lose, then that's when it leads to all these crocodile tears about losing. Oh, we lost. We're not so great. We're not the ultimate super progressive superheroes. And that's the philosophy behind their thinking. Very hubristical.
Yeah, you called it the logic. I call it the delusion behind their thinking, you know?
Well, no, but there's a formal logic, so to say, that's written out by Marx and Hegel that they at least subscribe to in academia and academic circles. They think that these guys have figured out the universe and they're guaranteed to win according to this logic. And I don't know if that's true. We'll see. Stay tuned.
Well, again, going back to what I was saying before, Zig saying that there's some type of hubris to this logic, right? I honestly, I just know for a person that's leading the company with access to 10,000 emails, as large of a company as Expensify is, I don't know what their listing is and where they rank in the number of companies. But look, I would venture to say they have bunches of employees. There's more people this guy's responsible for than just himself. Okay, and I would think what he owes to his shareholders and how those board meetings are going to go. Right, I'm literally saying if he doesn't give back some type of dividends or whatever he has to do, he has an actual fiduciary obligation to the people that are helping get this company where it is. I say legal fiduciary obligation. I don't think he can make a decision like this without clearing it through a bunch of other people ahead of time. Or I don't know, or maybe he could. Maybe he could.
They said if you in that email, they said they went through a process that started at the bottom and talked to everybody and blah, 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 blah. But the whole point, and people immediately, one of the retorts on Twitter was, I bet if anyone said that they didn't want you to do this, that you would have fired them. So like, it's hard to believe that you had a healthy, robust debate in the office about whether or not you should do this or not. I bet what you said was, I think we should do this, and you better validate my opinion so I can say all the employees agreed with me. And if not, you're going to be booted from the boardroom to the mailroom, you know?
Right. No, that's a fantastic point. It's a fantastic point. It was like with everyone that agreed with me, we all agreed.
We all agreed with me, the man who knows it all.
We have to get out a little bit early here today, but I want to end with this idea. Shine keeps bringing it up, and what he's doing, what Shine's doing is by trying to have other things to compare to or paint hypotheticals, is a similar thing that the Supreme Court does sometimes. What Shine's trying to do is figure out, okay, so where's the actual line? And what are you asking me to do then, Expensify CEO? And I don't have an Expensify account. Shine and I use Concur. Doesn't matter to us, okay? But what are you asking me to do is what Shine's saying. He's saying, what game would you like me to play then? If this is the standard that you on the left are setting, should we also play this same game on the right? Is there some, and I'll kick this question actually to Zig, is there some type of moral high ground, or is there some type of ethical hierarchy that we need to keep ourselves above? Do we need to be beyond reproach on this one? Or as Shine said, should companies that are owned by conservatives, what's the something good homekeeping place or whatever, the one that always gets in trouble for
Hobby Lobby?
Hobby Lobby, okay? If Hobby Lobby, every single time you purchase something, want to drop a little leaflet in there, vote for Trump leaflet. Is that the game we should start playing? If somebody that owns a hotel chain wants to put a little nice little card next to a mint on your pillow saying, vote for Trump, we hope you do. Here's all the questions to answer. Should we start playing that same game? Zig, I don't know, buddy. What do you think? Is there a reason not to play this game? Is this what we've risen to right now?
Well, I don't think anybody should go out and be some kind of crusader. That's what most of these progressives are crusaders. 21st century crusaders. They get out there and they blast the message to as many people, and they don't care about the consequence because they've bought in to the faith. They've bought into the crusade. They've bought into we are the holy Democrats coming to bring equality from heaven down to all you peasants, and that's what they mean. It's a crusade. That's why they don't care about losing millions of dollars. That's why they don't care about alienating people or frustrating people or turn them off. They bought into the crusade. And they think at the end, the result that they're going to get, they're not going to be in heaven. They think that they're going to bring the utopia here to earth.
Zig, are you afraid at all, though, about the right playing the same game? And then I want to kick to Shine so he can finish this commentary off. Are you afraid, though, that some people on the right are going to pick this up and become too zealous with it? Are they going to become crusaders? I know we shouldn't ask them to, but at the same time, to be totally honest, man, it's hard to say they wouldn't be justified if they wanted to, right? Again, unless we're positing some moral line out there that we shouldn't cross, which maybe it's out there, and maybe I'm advocating for that. But unless you do, if you just want to play fair game across the board, it's hard to see that they wouldn't be justified in doing the exact same thing, no?
I don't think two wrongs make a right. That's the teaching that I was brought up into. Perhaps other people aren't. Perhaps other people feel okay suspending that rule. But that's also why that's why I've always said that folks who are more conservative or Republican or libertarian or perhaps even old school Union Democrat, they need to go out there and create their own forms of media, create their own companies to get out. Instead of playing the game, you have to make a new one. Make a new game. Get out of the old game. Make your own. And if we don't, that's what's going to amplify the partisanship. If we don't get out of trying to compete in the national cesspool of ridiculous politics.
No, I totally understand,
man. You got to get out.
Volatility will only breed volatility. Partisanship is only going to breed more partisanship. We've seen it every time in the past. But let me let Shine finalize all this stuff here for us. She's the one that kind of drew some of these hypotheticals, man. I don't know. Where do you see this going? Do you see the right playing the same game? Should they? Do you see the left pulling these tactics back at all?
I feel like they shouldn't do it the way this guy did it. Yeah. Because I think that's a violation of federal election law. I really do. And I don't know if he'll get called on it. And I'm not an expert. I just want to point out, I said I feel that it's a violation of election law. I do not know. But I do say that I do believe in freedom of association. I do believe in the First Amendment. And like if companies want to pool their money and start more right-leaning PACs, C4s and C3s and push ideas, do it the way that, the way the current law establishes the way you're supposed to do it. I feel like the people right of communism, when I say the right, I mean like right of communism, people right of communism should use their First Amendment more and should be more creative about it. And maybe not just leave it up to private industry, because private industry seems to be like stuck in the 1980s, like we're still stuck on like, well, it's only a big deal if it gets on Fox News or something like that. So maybe like Zig said, use freedom of association, start a new game, start a C4, start a C3, start a PAC, whatever. Hobby Lobby, Chick-fil-A, whatever, all the, whatever. Maybe you're maybe a bunch of local stores in a geographical area like Knoxville or East Tennessee could start their own PAC or C4 or what have you. I mean, I know like all the e-cig places in Tennessee started their own, I believe it was a C4, to try to protect themselves from state and federal over-regulation. That's a good example of something I've seen in the past 10 years where I like the idea. It didn't really go anywhere. As I've talked to some people in Nashville, I don't know who their lobbyists are, but I know that it exists. They could just do a better job. And the reason I say more people should do that is people left of communism are doing it all the time. All the time. They create nonprofit companies. They call them collectives. And they actually come up with pretty cool ideas. They do like collectives for outdoor stuff. They start collectives for with indigenous peoples all over the world, and then sell the products like tax-free to Americans, like coffee and things like that, and end up using that money to do political action. So there's a lot of things going on in the world where you can pull your money, use freedom of association, and I'd say more specifically in the United States, where you can have a big political effect. And I feel like people left of communism are doing more of that than people right of communism. And if you're not an active participant, you don't get to help make the rules of the new game. You get to play by the rules of the new game. And I think we live in a time where a lot is changing. And it's a good time for you to be an active participant. If that means going through all the stuff that I just mentioned, this freedom of association, starting a C4, C3, or a PAC, then yes. If that's my answer to should the right play this game, they should be doing more of that.
Yeah, I hear you.
Like we work for a nonprofit. It's one of the only big ones right of communism.
Yeah, that's right.
That is effective. Because when I say right, I don't want you to think like George W. Bush or Trump or whatever. I just mean like right of taking over the means of production, right like to the right of Medicare for all, so that includes, moderate Democrats, anti-war Democrats, regular old moderate Republicans, conservative, and going all the way over there. In that whole space, there's far less freedom of association, First Amendment activity outside of your normal business activity like radio stations, TV stations, things like that. Those are all shrinking because those markets are shrinking. And there needs to be something new, and it's going to have to come from regular people. It may have to come from companies. Everything comes from capital, right? So it's got to start somewhere. Might as well be with you.
I hear you. Hey, on the way out here, Eric's talking about Chick-fil-A doing it better than anyone, to Zig's point a minute ago, saying like, hey man, if you just remain consistent, the two wrongs don't make a right type thing. Remain consistent about what you've always done. Eric said Chick-fil-A's doing it better than anyone. They were vehemently attacked by the left, but go to any one of their places at lunch, the lines are double wrapped around the building. They're certainly not hurting from me right now. And lastly, Jessica says on the way out here, look, maybe to some extent, it's just like people just don't want to deal with politics all the time. They just don't want politics and stuff that has nothing to do with politics. She says, blue checkmark people are making me mad. Laugh out loud. She said she had a Zoom meeting with a few musicians a few days ago. Like it was a part of a package that she had paid for. And half of this meeting, she said, was vote blue and y'all voted Biden, right? She said she almost lost it, needless to say. She didn't participate in the rest of the call because it would have been a big fight. She's not even a Trump supporter. She says, just don't shove Biden on me and something that has nothing to do with Biden, I think. Anyways, y'all, it is 10:01. We got to get to our work days. We love each and every one of y'all. Sincerely, for real. We will see y'all tomorrow.
Hey, everybody, and I put the I Believe in Representative Government IVOL petition in the chat. I need y'all to sign that today. There's a big county commission meeting tonight. They need some emails. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.